Daily routine orders 8. It's happened again. I was on my way to inspect Theoland when two dossers approached me. One, the scruffier of the two, asked me for change. I responded in my usual way, and as I passed on, I distinctly heard them laughing. I hope for their sakes that they manage to retain their sense of humour, because they'll need it quite soon. I never forget a face. And our next meeting will prove far more amusing for me than for them. By golly, it will. Page 52. We sat in St James's till 2 o'clock. It wasn't warm, but we were out of the wind. And then Ginger said, "I'm going to try around Trafalgar Square for a bit. Coming?" I nodded. "If it's okay with you, it's time I had to go at getting some dosh by myself, but I feel better if you were somewhere around." He nodded. "Fair enough. Tell you what, we'll try outside the National Gallery. It's not exactly the height of tourist season, but there are always people about, and you can see into the square from the steps." He walked back along Piccadilly, down the Haymarket, and along Pall Mall. The gallery wasn't fantastically busy, but there was a steady trickle of people going in and out, and some were sitting on the steps in spite of the cold. Ginger left me there. I watched him merge with the crowd and then turned my attention to the business of the day. It was hard at first, really hard. I stood watching people pass, trying to spot a likely punter. God knows what I was looking for. A kind face, I suppose, or at least someone who didn't look as though he'd swear or punch me in the mouth. It was futile, of course. You can't read people's characters in their faces. You never know what a punter's reaction is going to be, but I didn't know that then. Finally, I steeled myself and asked a guy at random. He growled, "Not a chance," and bound up the steps, taking them two at a time. I wasted the next 5 minutes feeling hurt, rejected. I asked myself how it was possible for a person to be sensitive to the beauty of fine art and at the same time insensitive to the feelings of a fellow creature. I took it personally, which is fatal. After a while, I realised this and began choosing guys and women at random, expecting nothing, telling them to have a nice day whether they gave or refused. I blunted the point of my own sensitivity in the flinty soil of their indifference, till I too became indifferent. And after that, it was easier. When someone becomes indifferent, it means that they are sort of turning off their emotions. They're turning down their empathy, and they're just not feeling. It's a very cold feeling. They're indifferent to the situation. And what we see here from Link is that he is desensitizing himself from that rejection, but he's taking it from their indifference. And I think one of the things really interesting is that we refer to here is that we see that someone might read a fantastic novel that talks about supporting people who are in trouble, or someone might go to an art gallery and look at pieces of art that try to make you reflect on other people's problems. But then actually when we see them in real life, like Link, we completely overlook them. And what Link is saying that is that, I guess what Swindells is saying, sorry, is that what the novel is trying to tell us is that you need to not only have high values in your thoughts, you have to have high values in your actions. I worked till the gallery closed, standing sometimes sitting on the steps, and my feet became numb and I was half frozen, but I stuck at it. And when the place closed at dusk and the punters drifted away, I counted up and found I'd collected just under £4. I stumped across to the square and found Ginger slumped on a bench. He looked up as I approached. "How'd it go?" I shrugged. £3.81. You? £2.44, and I'm frozen to the bone. Let's eat. We got pizza slices and Coke, and when Ginger wasn't looking, I bought 20 fags and a cheapo lighter and gave them to him. He said, "You're balmy, kiddo. You don't even smoke." I was just glad of his company. I didn't say so. In the evening, the wind strengthened and sleet began to fall, except that it didn't fall. It rode the wind in horizontal lines, flaying foreheads and cheeks. To flay something is to beat it with a sort of whip or something, so that you can imagine the sleet is whipping them as it was hit by the wind. In the evening, the wind strengthened and sleet began to fall. Sorry, I wish we were back in St. James's, but Ginger said it'd be a lot now. We ended up in the doorway of a shop called Chinacraft on the Strand, huddled in our bags, waiting for the Vaudeville Theatre to close. Over there, said Ginger through chattering teeth. Are some alcohols, right? Deep ones, good kit. Only you got to be here early. He lit a cigarette, took a deep drag and passed it to me. I hesitated, and he chuckled, exhaling smoke. Go on, might as well. You'll not see 60 anyway. Dossing in doorways. I took a drag and started choking. And he laughed. See what I mean? He said. You're halfway there already. If you think sleeping rough's just a matter of finding a dry spot where the fuzz won't move you on and getting your head down, you're wrong. The fuzz, by the way, is a colloquial term for the police. Not your fault, of course. If you never tried it, you know where knowing what it's like. So what I thought I'd do was sort of talk you through a typical night. That night in the Vaudeville alcove won't do, because there were two of us, and it's worse if you're by yourself. So you pick your spot, excuse me, wherever it is, unless you're in a squat or a derelict house or something, it's going to have a floor of stone, tile, or concrete and cold. It might be a bit cramped to shop doorways often are. And remember, if it's winter, you're going to be half frozen before you even start. Anyway, you got your place, and if you're lucky enough to have a sleeping bag, you unroll it and get in. Settle for the night? Well, maybe. Maybe not. Remember my first night, the Scouser? Of course you do. He kicked me out of my bedroom and pinched my watch. Well, that sort of thing can happen any night. And there are worse things. You could be peed on by a drunk or a dog. Happens all the time. One man's bedroom is another man's lavatory. You might be spotted by a gang of lagerlouts on the lookout for someone to maim. To maim means to hurt, to physically assault. That happens all the time too, and if they get carried away, you can end up dead. There are guys who like young boys, who think because you're a dosser, you'll do anything for dosh. And there's the psycho who'll knife you just for your pack. So, you lie, listening. You bet you do. Footsteps, voices, breathing even. Doesn't help you sleep. Then there's your bruises. What bruises? Try lying on a stone floor for half an hour. Just half an hour. You can choose any position you fancy, and you can change position as often as you like. You won't find it comfy, I can tell you. You won't sleep unless you're dead drunk or zonked on downers. And if you are and do, you're going to wake up with bruises on hips, shoulders, elbows, ankles, and knees. Especially if you're a bit thin from not eating properly. And if you do that 6 hours a night for 6 nights, you feel like you fell out of a train. Try sleeping on concrete then. And don't forget the cold. If you've ever tried dropping off to sleep with cold feet, even in bed, you know it's impossible. You've got to warm up those feet or lie awake. And in January, in a doorway, in wet trainers, it can be quite a struggle. And if you manage it, chances are you still need to go out for a pee, and then it starts all over again. And those are some of the hassles. I haven't mentioned stomach cramps from hunger, headaches from the flu, toothache, fleas and lice. I haven't talked about homesickness, depression, or despair. I haven't gone into how it feels to want a girlfriend when your circumstances make it virtually impossible for you to get one. How it feels to know you're a social outcast, in fact, a non-person to whom every ordinary everyday activity is closed. So, you lie on your bruises, listening, trying to warm your feet. You curl up on your side and your hip hurts, and so you stretch out on your back so your feet stay cold and the concrete hurts your heels. You force yourself to lie still for a bit, thinking that that'll help you drop off, but it doesn't. Your pack feels like a rock and under your head, and your nose is cold, and you wonder what time it is. Can you stop listening now? Or could someone still come? Distant chimes. You strain your ears, counting. 1 o'clock. It can't be only 1 o'clock, surely. I've been here hours. Did I miss a chime? What's that? Sounds like breathing. Heavy breathing, as in a maniac. Lie still, quiet. Maybe he won't see you. Listen, is he still there? Silence now. Creeping up, perhaps. No, relax. Geez, my feet are cold. A thought out of nowhere, my old room at home, my little bed. What I wouldn't give for. No, mustn't. Mustn't think about that. No, sleep that way. Somebody could be asleep in that room right now, warm and dry, safe. Lucky sod. Food. Oh God, don't start on about food. Remember that time in Whitby? Fish and chip caff. Long, sizzling haddock. Heap of chips like a mountain. So many you had to leave some. Wish I had them now. Mum. Wonder what Mum's doing. Wonder if she wonders where I am. How would she feel if she knew? I miss you, Mum. Do you miss me? Does anybody? Chimes again. 1:15. I don't believe it. DSS. Are they considering my claim? Not now, they're not. They're sleeping. Snug as a bug in a rug. Do they know what it feels like kipping in a doorway? No. And so it goes on, hour after hour. Now and then you doze a bit, but only a bit. You're so cold, so frightened, it hurts so much that you end up praying for morning, even though you're dog-tired. Even though tomorrow is certain to be every bit as grim as yesterday. And the worst part of it is knowing you haven't deserved any of it. So if I was in the classroom right now, one of the things we would be doing is we would be thinking about doing a bit of empathetic writing. And I think it's one of those skills that is a wonderful thing to be able to do, certainly in something you need to do in your GCSEs, is to put yourself in someone else's shoes and imagine what life would be like if you were them. And that's the sort of the bit of writing that Swindells has done here. Link is giving us that side of what it's like to truly be homeless and the grimness of it and the loneliness of it and the sadness of it. And if you wanted to do a piece of empathetic writing, you could say, put yourself in the shoes of someone at the moment who is suffering with a relative who has got coronavirus and the worries and the fears that are going through their mind. Or you could put yourself in the shoes of someone in America at the moment who is part of the upsurge against racist activities and all those, and try and really put yourself in their place and think about how they're feeling, and then think about what words and phrases and adjectives and things that you could describe, and changing your sentence structure and all those sorts of things to really get that across to the reader. And if you have some spare time on your hands and you're so inclined, I would suggest that to do a piece of empathetic writing would be a really valuable use of your time. But we'll read on. I walked all the way back to the DSS next morning, and Ginger was right. I was seen by this guy who told me that they decided I'd made myself homeless, so I wasn't eligible for benefit. I hadn't intended spilling my guts, but I did then. I was dirty and cold and hungry, and my feet were killing me. I was so tired, I could hardly string a coherent sentence together, and I'd had enough. So I told him everything. Vince and Mum, Vince and Carol, Vince and me. I thought he'd see. Thought he'd understand why I could never go, thought I'd never go back into that situation. But I might as well have been talking to one of the stone lions in Trafalgar Square. He just sat there looking at me through his blue-tinted specs, and when I finished, he repeated word for word and without facial expressions what he said to me before. I'd arranged to meet Ginger by Cleopatra's Needle. The weather was vile and I hadn't the heart for another long walk, so I got the tube at Euston and rode down to the embankment. I was early and he wasn't there, so I spent a miserable couple of hours begging along the river, getting colder and wetter and nothing else. In the end, I gave up and went and sat under the bridge in an icy draught. Ginger had given me 2 fags, so I cadged a light and smoked them both, lighting the second off the first. I was starving and the smoke made me nauseous. Nauseous means to feel sick. But it was comforting too, in a way I couldn't be bothered thinking about. When the fags were gone, I counted my dosh and found I was down to £4. £4.16 if you want to be exact. I was desperate for something to eat, and I also needed the lavatory. So I set off hoping to find a hot dog stand or something. I set off hoping to find a hot dog stand or something. I found a public toilet easy enough, and washing my hands and face made me feel a bit better, but I didn't find any food. I trailed back to the Needle, and this time Ginger was there, sitting on his pack with a dustbin bag draped over his head and shoulders. Like the new outfit, I said. Fetching, isn't it? He got up and gave me a twirl. Burlington Arcade, 400 quid. How'd you get on? I told him and he shrugged. That's it then. You'll have to go backward to Buckingham Palace, go for something more compact like a cardboard box. He was starving too. So we left the river and trogged north for pizza. It was dusk already, and we ate in a doorway, and he said, "How'd you like a proper kip tonight, Link, old son? Roof over your head that works." I looked at him. Sally Army or something? Nah, he shook his head. Bad news. Them places, full of raving head cases. Spent a night in one once. Scared me to death. No, I was thinking of Captain Hook. Who? Captain Hook. I looked at him. Go on then, I'll fall for it. Who's Captain Hook? He shook his head, grinning. It's not a put on, mate. It's a real guy. Get us a quick coffee and I'll tell you all about him. Daily routine orders 9. 3 is a significant number. It crops up in all sorts of places. 3 cheers. 3 musketeers. If I had 3 wishes. 3 blind mice. The Blessed Trinity. 3 armed services. The 3 little pigs. A significant number. I have 3 recruits now. When I had 1, I was a murderer. 2, a double murderer. And now that I've got 3, I suppose I'm a mass murderer. What the Yanks call a serial killer. If they caught me now, which they won't, they'd probably make a film about me. Naturally, I've arranged them the army way, tallest on the left, shortest on the right, and they look quite smart, especially now that I've cut their hair. I have to try to get them some boots, or at least proper shoes. Something which will take a shine. At the moment, they're all wearing those manky trainer things. Last night's bit of business, signing up recruit number 3, gave me particular pleasure. You'll know why presently, but let me start at the beginning. It was about 2000 hours, and I'd just begun my nightly patrol. It was an unpleasant evening, wind and sleet, exactly the sort of evening one might need in my line of work. I'd walked into the Gloucester Avenue and down the steps onto the towpath of the Grand Union Canal, intending to stroll along by Camden Lock to see what I could see when I spotted him. He was a miserable-looking creature. Thin and round-shouldered, with rat's tails of greasy hair halfway down his back. He had some pieces of cardboard which he was arranging on the ground under the stairs I just descended. It was fairly dry there, and it was obvious he was setting out up a billet for the night. I had on my do-gooders rig, and I approached him looking concerned. Surely, I said, you don't intend spending a night like this in a place like that? He was suspicious. Oh, yes. He looked at me, and I knew straight away he wasn't new to the game. You got a better idea? He growled. I shrugged, putting on my best apologetic grin. No offence, I said. It's just that it's cold, and I wondered whether you tried your luck at the Plender Street Hostel. There's no Plender Street Hostel, he said. And besides, hostels are always full up by this time. He gazed at me. What's it to you anyway? What's your name, Grandad? No game. I smiled my woolly-headed smile. There is a hostel on Plender Street. It's new, so not many people know about it. So that's why it's not full. How do you know so much? I'm the warden, I lied. I run the place. Why are you not there then? Oh, he was canny, this one. I'd need all my talent. I have to call home, I said. Feed Sappho. We don't live in, you see. Sappho? My cat. He snored. Fucking cat sleeps warmer than me. Eats better too. He studied me. So you run this hostel? Right. And it's not full? Not when I left. Got to be a catch. He looked at me sidelong. How much? I shook my head. Nothing, no catch. It's free hostel, breakfast too. So if I go along? I grinned. If you go along, you'll probably be fine. If you arrive with me, it's a cert. Where do you live then? Not far, Mornington Place. Know it? He nodded. I know it. Okay, I'm in. Only you better be on the level, Grandad, because if you ain't, I'll kick your tripes out. So he abandoned his cardboard and shouldered his pack, and we walked and we walked and we talked. Whereabouts you from? I inquired. I didn't give a damn where he was from. I knew exactly where he was going. Leicester. Leicester? No work there, huh? He shook his head. 6 months I was writing letters, going for interviews, no chance. So you thought you'd try London? Not straight away. I tried the army first. Well, you can be sure my ears pricked up at that. I was genuinely interested now. The army? I said. And what happened? He shrugged. Couldn't stand it. Thick sods bawling at you all day long, telling you what to do, and the grub, Jesus. So I bought myself out. Well, not everybody's cup of tea, the army. Full of fascists, I shouldn't wonder. I was absolutely seething, of course, but I didn't give myself away. I was magnificent. Thick sods, indeed. Don't know about fascists, he said. I'm not into politics, but you must have to be desperate to stay in that mob. He spat in the gutter. Better off on the streets. Right, my lad, I thought. You don't know it, but you're about to join another army. It's a very small army, but it doesn't rely on volunteers. And you can't buy yourself out. By golly, you can't. I told myself, watch this one. He's not green, but it turned out easier than I expected. Soft sod squatted down on my kitchen floor to fondle the ruddy animal, and I let him have it with the kit eat cat tin. Well, trained to kill, see? Know the exact spot to go for. And you know something? The lad looks like 100% better with a short back and sides. His mum would be proud of him. So, we see that Shelter has taken another victim, and we see that he's got some very strange habits. So, for instance, in this one, he's killed this young man, and then he's cut his hair before he's buried him under his floor. And he's thinking about putting on, buying shoes for them so that they can all wear matching shoes. So we are clearly dealing with a very disturbed and dangerous person. Anyway, we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me. I will post this online for those who prefer to follow along in their own time. And we'll carry on again on Friday, and I will put the next lot of pages onto Showbie. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Geography. 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 Yeah. Okay.